You'll be lost for hours in the first iteration of Dark Souls 2's DLC, and I mean that literally, because level design is one of the most enticing parts of the Sunken Crown DLC. The entire zone feels like a huge maze made up of smaller mazes inside of it, and that is a wonderful thing for a sequel that suffered from really poor linear level design until now. I was lost in the Sunken Crown DLC, and I loved it. Because, you see, it's one thing to force your way past hordes of enemies to get to the boss at the end, and it's another thing completely to do that while trying to maintain a sense of direction and a sense of space. The DLC forces you to focus on your surroundings so you can make your way through the level as efficiently as possible. So I cared about the room with the spikes on the ground, and I cared about the staircase with the walking poison statues of death. I was forced to care about my surroundings because it helped me conquer the sunken city. To be lost is to be immersed, and I felt like I was properly exploring for the first time in Dark Souls 2 because it wasn't just me against the enemies, it was me against the world. So the level design is a really awesome aspect of the DLC, and as you can probably see in the footage, the world can be used to your advantage. There are these blue switches that predictably alter the geography of the level, raising pillars with hollows in the middle, giving you multiple interactions with different levels of one elevator. The most satisfying way I found to use these switches was with a bow, because it allows you to block off the line of sight for archers in the distance, or maybe raising a pillar into a mob of enemies. And I honestly got this really cool Legend of Zelda vibe from some of the rooms. Rooms which require you to activate switches while standing on different platforms. Movement and platforming in this way is simple, like in The Legend of Zelda, but it's satisfying and it's incredibly effective in a Souls game, and more of this geography altering and puzzle solving is something I'd love to see in the Souls games. It's pretty easy to dismiss some of these enemies as simple, but I thought about it and, each enemy had something that made them unique. In terms of gameplay, they all have one quirk that makes them difficult to kill, or they all have some subtle way of killing you. For example, the Sunken Knights challenged my established way of playing with a strength build because they never staggered. Some knights will have an aura of poison that punishes your backstab attempt, and the bugs throughout the level will break your weapon, forcing you into a backup weapon that you're less familiar with, and that really added to the feeling of adventure going through the DLC. I had to actually change my weapon as I went through, and using a weapon that you're not familiar with or having a backup weapon that you have to resort to really adds to that element of adventure, You have to actually use everything in your arsenal to try and get through the level, and I'm glad they made it so that things in this level really wear down the durability of your gear. My favorite enemy though is in the crypt, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but there comes this point where there's this surprise and the enemy is really aggressive, and figuring out the secret to killing them while under pressure was really one of the high points for me, so I'm not going to spoil it for you. But basically they chase you and you figure out the secret to killing them, and that feeling of sort of thinking on your feet, that was really awesome. The main enemy you fight is this variation of the Sunken Knight, and that's one criticism I have of the DLC. I would have liked to see a few different main enemy designs, maybe to break up the monotony. There were different types of knight, but every Sunken Knight had the same color palette and the same sort of model, and every single one of them was dispatched in 2 swings of my hammer, and killing the same style of enemy over and over again felt like a bit of a grind, but there is enough variety to keep it interesting for your first playthrough. And I'm not going to spoil the bosses in a first impressions video, but 2 out of the 3 boss encounters I was really impressed with. Both of them have a combination of unique and familiar design, and I was really happy to see less humanoid and more monster designs in the DLC. One of the most important things is that they have this really fully fleshed out array of attacks that keep you fighting for your life the entire fight, and they keep it unique and they keep it action-packed. It's not like you can just stand back and heal. There's one boss fight that isn't great, and you'll see which one I'm talking about when you see it, but in its defense, it's supposed to be fought in co-op, so when you're actually fighting alongside other phantoms, I imagine you'll feel like you're fighting your own battle with the other phantoms. You'll be fighting individual enemies, whereas usually when you fight with phantoms, you focus on one enemy, and it feels like you're just ganking them. I feel like this fight will be better in co-op, but you'll see what I mean. So I think we should finish this first impressions by talking about the presentation. And I think I have to start this by saying that From Software, you guys are major teasers. They gave everyone access to the door of the DLC a week before the DLC actually launched, and a locked door with a whole world behind it inspires a lot of curiosity, as well as a small bunch of hackers. I know a few people who spent more time trying to hack into the DLC than actually playing it, which is an adventure through the game's code not many of us can comprehend. And because they taunted us with a closed door with the entire DLC behind it for an entire week, one of my favorite moments was opening that door and traversing that first crooked corridor. They really did a wonderful job with that. That twisted hall was such an awesome distortion of space, and the vista it opens up to was something to admire. I love it when games foreshadow your final destination or your final nemesis, and the Sunken Crown DLC does both of those things straight away. You hear a dragon's powerful breathing as you traverse the first hall, and you're also dominated by this gargantuan pyramid inside a cave, which is really brilliant imagery. And also, in terms of presentation, the final boss makes these constant interruptions to your play all around the map that really made me feel like this was the dragon's home. You know, he's constantly slumbering wherever he pleases, and he made his presence known and felt by not particularly caring about the other inhabitants of the area. So the verdict on Dark Souls 2's first package of DLC is that I think it's easily worth $10 for the fan that enjoyed Dark Souls 2. But in my opinion, it's even more worth it for the fan that didn't enjoy Dark Souls 2. And you know, the DLC can't fix all the problems with Dark Souls 2 if you didn't enjoy it, but Dark Souls 2 is a different game than the original. It fixes a bunch of issues we all had with the first game, but it also falls short of a bunch of ambitious ideas. The DLC brings back the awesome level design we remember from Dark Souls 1, and it realizes more of what Dark Souls 2 is capable of. It took me about 4 hours to complete most of it offline, so I reckon it will take the average player between 3 to 6 hours to complete. I don't know about you, but I reckon that's worth $10. And if the next 2 pieces of DLC are as good as this or better, then we're going to end up with a package of DLC that surpasses what Artorias of the Abyss did, and it'll be even cheaper. If you want to become a part of my inner circle here on YouTube, then you can support videos like this one by clicking on the bonfire and becoming a patron. There's a video on my Patreon page which explains how that works. This week is all about the DLC, so look forward to some more in-depth stuff as well as playing the game for yourself. Overall though guys, I hope you got some good information out of this. If you felt like you had a different first impression than me, then feel free to tell me. After all, it is my first impression. I feel like I'm going to change my opinion on some of this stuff, you know, when I first bosses over and over again, or when I go through the level for the umpteenth time and see how well I remember the level design. So if you had a different opinion, let me know. I hope you enjoy the DLC coverage this week, and as usual, thank you for watching my videos. You're awesome, and I'll see you soon.